Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. Today, we put our player evaluations on hold because the Philadelphia Phillies have officially offered Yoshinobu Yamamoto a contract offer. Well, is it realistic if he signs here? What does the offer mean? And what exactly does this mean for the future of the Philadelphia Phillies? There's a lot to break down with this very interesting decision to offer Yamamoto. And we'll break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know what time it is, folks. It's time for another episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Connor Thomas, and please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube. If you like Locked On Phillies, subscribe. It'll get you notifications every time new episodes are posted, so you won't miss news like this. Yoshinobu Yamamoto getting an offer from the Philadelphia Phillies. I really appreciate everyone who's already done that. It's really simple. Just go to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. You're subscribed. It takes like 2 seconds, costs you no money. It's super easy to do. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. So FanDuel's awesome. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, I just actually got this notification, which is interesting, from Bleacher Report that says Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto are supposed to link up and go to the Rams game tonight in Los Angeles, which, that's not a great sign for anyone who's not a Los Angeles Dodgers fan. And that's part of the conversation that we're going to get into. But let's first get into the details of what happened with the Phillies and Yamamoto. So they had a meeting. So the Phillies extended a meeting to Yamamoto. He accepted. He came. He talked to the team. He got a FaceTime from Bryce Harper. They hashed out the details. It was basically why he should come to Philadelphia and why he should be interested in the Phillies organization in general. And they ran through a whole bunch of reasons, I'm sure. The contention, the amount of money they can offer him, the prestige of playing in a city like Philadelphia, what it would mean to this fan base, where he fits into their plans. All of this stuff, I'm sure, was handled in the meeting between Yamamoto and the Phillies brass. And they go through that, and all of that kind of takes time to flesh out as he discusses with other teams. And the Phillies have made a decision to make an offer to Yamamoto. Now, who is Yoshinobu Yamamoto? If you're not familiar, he's the best pitcher in Japan right now. He is the guy. He's not Shohei Ohtani caliber simply because he doesn't play a position and hit and anything like that, but he pitches, and he's done pretty darn well over in Japan. He's won their version of the Cy Young Award 3 times. He's been an MVP. Like, he's done it basically all over there, and he's young. So you've got the opportunity to add a guy to the rotation that is an international stud. So what do the Phillies do? They decide they're going to offer a contract to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Here's why it was big that they even had a meeting with him, because the Phillies previously have not really ever been a player in the market for Japanese stars. They're not really ever in the conversation. This time around, they have been, partially because of contention, the fact that they went to the World Series in 2022, they went to the NLCS in 2023, they're right on the edge of finding a way to a World Series. So this puts them in a very interesting spot where you can take home run swing moves in the offseason potentially and try and get yourself over the hump. It's also interesting that they offered Yamamoto because that's another step in the right direction, right? It's one thing to have a meeting. It's another thing to say, yo, man, you want to sign here? Here's the check. Go ahead and put your name on it. We're good to go, and you'll be a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. So this is the first sizable commitment to a Japanese superstar that the Philadelphia Phillies have ever offered. Like, they have not been in the market for any of these other guys coming out of Japan, and now they're interested. So there's a couple ways to look at this, right? And we're going to get into that in the What Does This Mean segment of the program, which will be the second segment we do coming up. But something important to note about this offer to Yamamoto. Per reports, and Matt Gelb was the one who initially reported this, Matt Gelb, close personal friend. And I say that kind of jokingly because we just sit in this press box and I'm on the other side and he's on the far other side. So I see him in passing. We're not actually close personal friends, but I've seen Matt Gelb. I know he does a lot of work with the Phillies. I know he's covered the team forever. He does great work, so I can trust the report, and it's been reported multiple other places. Yamamoto's offer from the Philadelphia Phillies is on the table. We don't know exactly how much the offer is for, but the expectation is that it will not be the most lucrative offer monetarily for Yamamoto. In layman's terms, the Phillies aren't offering him the most money. So if the Phillies aren't offering him the most money, why in the world would he sign here? Well, it's all those reasons I listed out that they would have gone over in the meeting. You got a contending team. You got a team in a very passionate city. You got a team with an owner that is very, very willing to spend money to make this team great. And you've got a team that has a really good makeup of star players around him. It would be a great opportunity for Yamamoto to play in Philadelphia. I'm sure he understands that. He wouldn't have taken the meeting with the Phillies without understanding that. So with all of that in mind, the offer's out on the table, and now we'll wait to see how he decides. If he wants to accept it, if he wants to decline it, if he wants to counter the Philadelphia Phillies offer. But all we know right now is there is an offer on the table to Yamamoto. He has the opportunity, if he so chooses, to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies right now. But he's going to weigh out his option, right? He's a highly sought after free agent. One of the, if not the highest profile free agents available left. Ohtani's already signed. Nola's back with the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, this is probably the guy that you're keeping an eye on if you're following MLB free agency. Where is he going to end up? And there's a couple other teams in the mix. I mean, obviously the Dodgers are in the mix. That's why he and Shohei Ohtani are going to the Los Angeles Rams game tonight. The Mets are in the mix a little bit. There are a bunch of other teams that would like the services of Yamamoto. So we'll see. There's probably a pretty good chance, considering that the Phillies are not the most lucrative offer, that he does not end up here in Philadelphia. And that's the thing you got to remember through all of this. You might get excited about the meeting. You might get excited about the contract offer. Bottom line, they are not the favorite to sign Yamamoto. I don't think they're going to sign Yamamoto. Like, it is a shot in the dark. But the fact that the Phillies are taking it shows you how valuable he could be as a pitcher and how much they value adding any piece possible that can get them closer to the ultimate goal, which is winning the World Series. This, in the meaning section of this episode, I think it's a good thing. I'll tell you more about why I feel that way. Even if he doesn't sign here, which I don't expect him to sign here, I think this is a step in the right direction for the Philadelphia Phillies fan base. And it should be an exciting time for the Phillies. Who knows? I don't know what's going on in this guy's mind. I don't know anything about him besides the fact he's a very good pitcher, pitched in Japan, picking between a variety of Major League Baseball teams. It's not like I grew up watching the guy. It's not like I know him, like his personality. No, like free agents in Major League Baseball, you have a general feel of where they're from, what players they played with, what type of system they like. Do they like a hitting coach that allows them to be more liberal at the plate? If you're a pitcher, do you have a certain pitching coach that seems to have worked for you in the past? And is the pitching coach on the team you're going to either that person or of a similar school of thought? Like, you have all of these data points for guys that have been in Major League Baseball to hit free agency. But for people coming in internationally, we don't know. We don't really have a good idea. I'd be lying to you if I said I keep up with Japanese professional baseball. So it's still a mystery who Yamamoto is going to sign with. The Phillies have made their offer. That's about all they can do, right? The Phillies have done everything they could do to potentially bring Yamamoto to Philadelphia. Now the ball's in his court. If he chooses another team, that's not the fault of the Philadelphia Phillies. That's simply his decision as a free agent. And I wouldn't fault the organization for that. In fact, I think the organization has already done their job very, very well when it comes to the Yamamoto sweepstakes and considering where the Philadelphia Phillies currently stand in the landscape of Major League Baseball. So, again, I like that they've offered. I don't expect them to get him, especially considering that the report is that this is not the most lucrative offer. And that's just kind of where we stand right now. But there's more to this decision than just that. And I'm talking from the Phillies' perspective. There's more to the decision to offer a contract to Yamamoto. I'll break down exactly what I'm talking about when we come back on Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about my friends over at, FanDuel Sportsbook. Come on. You can score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's insane, right? That's $150 just if your team wins. You could pick the heaviest favorite in the world. It could be a team minus $1 billion on the money line. You just say $5 on that. You'd normally win. I don't know what the odds on that, like a fifth of a cent. But with this promotion, $150 right in your account that you can wager on a whole bunch of other stuff. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, this offer makes it no better time to get in on the action. And the app's really easy to use. Simple interface. You can find all the bets very easily, and they have a lot of bets to find. Not only can you bet the money line, but you can bet spreads, parlays, props, over-unders, futures, everything you can imagine when it comes to sports betting. Live bets, too. I love the live bet. You get a feel for the game. You go in on your FanDuel app. You pick the team you think is going to win. You get better odds. It's great. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and keep the NFL season going. College basketball, NHL, you got NBA, everything. I almost forgot the name of the basketball association. Go ahead and check it out. FanDuel's got everything you could ever want in a sports book. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So what does this mean? What does the offer to Yamamoto mean? I kind of broke it down from the Phillies' perspective already, but here's why it's important. Not only is it important because in the past, Japanese players have kind of been a no-go for Philadelphia Phillies general managers or president of baseball operations before. Frankly, they haven't shown a lot of interest, and Japanese players have not shown a lot of interest in them, which is no knock on the Philadelphia Phillies totally. There are plenty of organizations across baseball that just aren't players in this market. But as the rise of Japanese superstars continues to grow, think about it. Back in 2000, in the early 2000s, it was kind of just Ichiro was the guy you thought about. And then there were more and more every once in a while, but you didn't really have another star the caliber of Ichiro Suzuki. And then Shohei comes over. And now you've got guys like Kodai Senga, and now you've got Yoshinobu Yamamoto coming over. Masataka Yoshida is another guy that's come over from Japan. The big-time names out of Japan that have really taken over baseball. The only guy that's really made it to superstardom recently is Ohtani, but some of those other players. Senga was really good for the Mets last year. You've got a lot of guys making impacts around baseball that you can look at and say, okay, there's a lot of talent over there. If you're not playing in that market, you're at a significant disadvantage for acquiring talent. The Phillies, even if they don't get Yamamoto, have announced their presence in this market. And as you can see from free agency the past couple of years, this year Aaron Nola, last year Trey Turner, the year before Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, even before that. This is a team that has had success acquiring superstar players through free agency. They're a player in the free agent market. So as long as they decide that they want to be a player in the Japanese star market, coming over internationally to the United States to play Major League Baseball, when they get posted, the Phillies should be in those conversations all the time. Because clearly they wouldn't be getting all these superstars if there wasn't a draw to Philadelphia. And the more they go after guys, the more they have a chance of getting them. And something else we've seen recently with Japanese star players, and maybe this is the Shohei Ohtani effect, but it seems that part of their requirements is to either go to an organization that has other Japanese players or another Japanese player, or has had Japanese players in the past. So, for example, Seattle. Ichiro played in Seattle. That's an organization that Japanese players seem to feel comfortable with. That's the thing. You have to have historically interest in that market, and it builds over time. You put yourself in that conversation. You might not get Yamamoto, but the next Japanese superstar who gets posted might be like, okay, they were in on Yamamoto. They're definitely in consideration. Oh, they made me a nice offer. Oh, I like their pitch. I sign there. As soon as you get one international player to sign here out of Japan, well, you increase your odds and you go further because you now have a track record of signing those players. And if you treat those players right, and Philadelphia Phillies have a top-notch organization, and this fan base is awesome. They're competitors. They're in World Series contention right now. It's a snowball effect, right? So that's what this means to me. I don't think they're going to get Yamamoto. Like, there is not a thought in my mind that he's going to be wearing a Philadelphia Phillies uniform next year. I don't think it's a distinct possibility at all. They don't have the highest dollar amount per reports. He doesn't seem to have that much interest in Philadelphia. Not that he took a meeting, but I don't think it's realistic at all to think he's going to play for the Phillies next year. But this means more than that. Announcing your intention to be in on Japanese star players puts you in a market that has become very, very talented over the past couple of years. And that's something you just absolutely have to be a part of. The Phillies could very easily say, we're going to sit on our hands. We've got good players already. We're going to focus on contention with who we've got, because they have basically said with what they've done, or rather what they haven't done in free agency, they're not interested in another big move. And yet they're in on Yamamoto, partially because he's a young, talented pitcher who's probably the most valuable player still out there in free agency. But also I think part of it is saying we need to start being involved in this market so that in the future we have a better shot at getting these players. And I think that's a very prudent move by the Philadelphia Phillies. I think that's a good place to be. And I think that's playing chess, not checkers. Checkers is, we're not going to sign this guy. Why even have a meeting? Why even offer him? Let's just move on. Chess is, okay, we might not sign him, but we get a meeting and we put an offer out there. We're in the news. People know we're interested in Japanese superstars. And the next time someone comes out, here we go. We're going to be right back in on them. And we've got a little bit better of a track record, or a more existent track record of trying to convince these players to play in Philadelphia. That's just great. Could you imagine, like, this has become prevalent in baseball, but like the Dominican Republic, there are so many players that come out of the Dominican Republic that end up playing in the major leagues that become superstars. Could you imagine if just every player that came out of the Dominican Republic, the Philadelphia Phillies, for whatever reason, were just like, I don't want to pay the transfer fees. We haven't really signed someone from there before, so we don't really know the right way to go about it, and we're not used to doing that, so we're just not going to do it. Like, do you know how many great players you'd miss out on? That's what Japanese baseball is turning into. And that puts the Philadelphia Phillies at a point where they need to be in the mix. If they're going to truly contend, it would be negligent for them to not be in this space when it comes to acquiring new baseball talent. So I like the precedent it sets. I don't believe this move in and of itself will actually come of anything. I think Yamamoto is most likely going to end up on the Dodgers. That team's going to be a juggernaut. And that's a problem that we'll face when we get close to the regular season. But regardless of where Yamamoto ends up, the fact that the Phillies have not only taken a meeting, but offered him is a huge step in the right direction. That's credit to Dave Dombrowski, Sam Fuld, John Middleton, and all the guys who are realizing in the Philadelphia Phillies organization that they need to start being in this conversation. This is what the really great teams do. It's what the Yankees do. It's what the Dodgers do. And I have long considered the Phillies as an organization on that level because of the market, the fan base, the ownership since John Middleton has taken over. But they truly need to be all in. And part of that is paying a lot for free agents. And part of that is paying a lot for international free agents and being willing to pay like the transfer fees and everything, the international money. And the Phillies have proven that they're willing to do that now to a certain extent. And this is kind of the first step in a long-term plan. Now, I talked about this today. I was on the radio talking about the Eagles, and the Eagles are not in a good spot right now. But part of the Eagles' issues is I don't know that they truly acknowledge how big of a problem they have. The first step to fixing a problem is you've got to acknowledge you have one. And the Phillies, by doing this, have acknowledged that they need to be more aggressive in pursuing Japanese stars. And they've done that with Yamamoto. So, and I don't think this is a hollow offer. Like, I don't think the Phillies are putting this offer out saying, well, he's not going to take it. This is just eyewash, right? I don't think that's it. I think they've made a legitimate offer, a sizable offer to Yamamoto. And I don't think he'll be here just because I think he's such a sought-after player. I think the Phillies would love to have him, and I think they made the best offer that they're possibly willing to make. And maybe because they've already got a full rotation, they've already spent so much money on Aaron Nola this offseason, it won't even out to the top offer on the market. But I'm happy the Phillies are finally playing in this league, right? I'm happy that they're finally in this conversation. Honestly, it's taken them too long, but hey, better late than never, right? So we'll see how the Yamamoto thing plays out. Coming up as we wrap up Locked On Phillies, I'm going to talk to you about the next steps after this decision to offer Yamamoto and what we should be watching for. So we'll wrap up the episode with that as we finish up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So what do you do now if you're the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, don't expect them to make any other big offers to free agents. Yamamoto's young compared to the free agent pitchers available, and he's also super talented. Like, you don't get the opportunity to get these guys. If he was in the majors, he'd still be under team control under his rookie status, or not rookie status, but like he'd be under team control because he won't have enough service time to get to free agency. That's what works for players of his age. So, or I should say most likely. He could have always gotten called up sooner. Who knows what happens if he played his entire career in the minors and majors. But the point is, you don't get the opportunity to get these players very often. You just don't. At that age, at that talent, in free agency where you could just pay them, no, you normally have to trade for those guys or draft those guys. So it's a very unique opportunity. I wouldn't expect the Philadelphia Phillies to be throwing out big money at another starter. I wouldn't expect them to make a big trade for another top-level starter. I just think this was a situation that presented an opportunity for the Philadelphia Phillies, and they're taking advantage to the best of their ability. Again, I'll tell you this. I believe 100% Yamamoto is not going to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies. I would be absolutely flabbergasted if he did. But what you got to look at now is, are the Phillies still searching for another starter? We evaluated Christopher Sanchez earlier this week in our episodes, and I talked about how he may or may not be in the rotation depending on who the Phillies bring in free agency. There's still a ways to go. We haven't even hit the new year yet. And once the new year starts, January, February, you can still sign free agents that late. The Phillies have gotten some late signings, including one Bryce Harper. So it's never too late to make an impact on the team. I do think that they're going to continue to sniff around the starting pitching market, but I don't think they'll be as in on other players as they are on Yamamoto because of the aforementioned circumstances of his potential acquisition. So this doesn't mean that the Phillies are going to sign another starter, but it does mean they're thinking about it. And it means for the right price, they might go out and get somebody else, or they might make a trade for somebody else. I don't see it as overly likely, but it's something that's a possibility to keep an eye on as you go forward. And it also says that the Phillies are not totally set on where their rotation is. So outside of Nola, who they just paid, Wheeler, who's amazing, pretty much the other three guys in the rotation, Ranger Suarez, Taijuan Walker, Christopher Sanchez, their spots are not guaranteed. They'll be on the roster, I think. Those guys are all good enough to be on the major league roster. I don't see any of them not being on the team. My point is, there's no guarantee that the rotation looks like we think it's going to look like right now. So I guess the next step would be keep an eye out for starting pitchers, keep an ear out for what the Phillies are saying about starting pitchers, and keep in the back of your mind as we get deeper into free agency. They were willing to bring in a pitcher whose value met the potential offer, which would even out to a good deal for the Philadelphia Phillies. If they find another one of those guys, who knows what could happen? I don't know that the Phillies are done in the starting pitching market. And if they hadn't been in on Yamamoto, I would have assumed that they were. Now, I'm kind of 70-30 in favor that they are, but that 30% is that's a substantial amount of thought that the Phillies could still be looking at signing another starter. So it adds a little bit more to the offseason to keep an eye on. Again, just to wrap up the news, Yoshinobu Yamamoto received a contract offer from the Philadelphia Phillies. It's not expected to be the highest dollar amount when it comes to the deal. I don't think he's likely to sign here. That's my opinion. The other stuff was reported. That last part, me not thinking he's going to sign here, is just my opinion. We'll see how it plays out. But at the end of the day, the Phillies making this offer, the Phillies taking the meeting previously, it shows they're starting to exhibit more interest in Japanese stars who are coming over and being posted by their Japanese professional teams. And that's a good step in the right direction for a team who has not pursued those players in the past. So I like the news. I don't love the news because I don't think the Phillies are getting him, but it is what it is. They're taking a step in the right direction, and I like that. So that's the big news of the day. I wanted to break that down. Next episode, we'll get back to breaking down the player evaluations for the 2023 season, unless Yamamoto signs for the Phillies. And then we'll do the next 1,000 episodes on what a great president of baseball operations Dave Dombrowski is and how awesome this team's going to be. But for the time being, that's all the news we have to report. Thank you so much for checking out Locked On Phillies. Really appreciate it. Please make sure, again, you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks again for checking us out, and I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.